So first up is Energy Upgrade California. So Energy Upgrade California is a statewide campaign adopted by our state government to encourage Californians to be more energy efficient. You could just think of it as a marketing campaign, except it's not made by a company and they're trying to get you to spend less on power. They're just trying to teach you about tips, tricks, rebates, energy management tools, and really just trying to teach the everyday Californian on how to save energy and save the earth. So Energy Upgrade California actually has a specific focus on minority communities. And they're working with the nonprofits you see over here on the right to focus on APA members on saving energy. So this is actually how Cause is involved with this campaign and why we're working on Energy Upgrade California. We're all working with them to create a digital narrative to encourage the APA community to save energy by raising our own stories. So to start that off, we had interviews with elderly members and talked about their experience and identity as an APA member and how that intersects with their habits and ways of conserving energy. We created blog posts that provided the foundation for our thinking and our theory. We also created short form videos that went hand in hand with the social media campaign that encouraged everyone to save energy. All in all, we just wanted to put our foot down, saying that we can do energy conservation too, and that we can do it even better. So why are we doing this? Well, let's not mince words. We are in a human-driven climate crisis. And yes, I checked, we're not losing our 501(c) status by making this statement. It is not partisan. This is definitely not fine. We are all surrounded by fire. I live in Vegas, and boy, it is hotter than this entire cohort. In fact, the IPCC report said that 14,000 studies conclude that climate change is man-made and real, and we all need to make contributions to save ourselves. I'll now be passing it on to Lena.
So from our conversations with Sandeep Tungar and Dr. Victor Thompson, we found that energy conservation is a priority in both of their lives. Mr. Tungar is an Indian American who loves his garden, and Dr. Thompson is a Pacific Islander with a passion for playing the ukulele, but they both describe the importance of conserving resources and preserving the land that means so much to them. So the image of what we are told environmentalism should look like typically does not include Asian Pacific Americans or their cultural practices. But as we can see from the first two percentages, Asian Pacific Americans care deeply about the environment. Yet even so, their voices are not represented in the most important decision-making processes. Western conservation methods and Asian Pacific American conservation practices are both important contributions to the larger environmental movement. In my family, my grandparents on my dad's side taught me to fold plastic bags in squares, whereas my other set of grandparents told me tying them in knots was the way to go. So even within the community, there are variations. But as I said before, these differences do not make one way any less valuable.
So another way we investigated energy conservation was through the perspective of Korean American pastor Ted Kang. And as we interviewed Pastor Kang, we realized that there's a little bit of an issue for our community in the energy movement, and that is the lack of APA recognition of our diversity. Asian Americans aren't a monolithic group, and there's a lot more to it than just one or two different cultures. And Pastor Kang gives us an example of how not many resources are translated into various Asian languages. And if they are, it's limited to just Chinese and Japanese. And that outreach is very minimal to our community, and that needs to change if we want to be more inclusive. So we took his words and his knowledge and turned them into social media posts, such as on the next slide. We used a quote directly from his interview and made it into a Twitter post. And on the slide after this one, we added some statistics on the APA community and energy conservation in addition to his quotes. You can follow more of our social media campaigns on any of these social media platforms listed down below.
Okay, so one of the challenges in outreaching to the APA community about energy conservation is that while this is often practiced by many members in the Asian community, especially the elders, is not often framed as energy conservation, and it is not often framed as being good for the planet as a whole. In fact, one of my insights is that when talking to older APA members and asking them what they do to be more green is going to get you some confused looks. And for many APA members who learn practices from their parents, like turning off the light, conserving water, growing fruits and vegetables instead of flowers, reusing containers, and etc., they were taught to do this to save money, and with frugality being a common cultural value. So when trying to learn about the green practices of Asian immigrants, I often had to ask about how they save on their utility bills, asking how they save on water, use less electricity, reusing everyday plastic items, often got a much more enthusiastic response than when I asked questions about green practices or recycling. And none of this meant as a shade on the Asian community. It's completely understandable considering most of the people I talked to and interviewed were still getting settled into this country, and obviously were more concerned with day-to-day living and expenses and less with planet-wide issues. In fact, I think this is an important insight for community leaders who want to be more green. When trying to convince people that your idea is a good one, it is important to meet them where they're at and frame your ideas in ways that they can understand. Just imagine, you're not going to walk up to an old Asian grandma and explain how energy conservation will reduce greenhouse emission gas to 1990s levels, right? She'll probably hit you with her purse. And like I mentioned previously, turning off the light, conserving water, etc., are learned practices from our parents from a young age. That ultimately became an inspiration for my group to come up with the social media post that you're looking at right now. Of course, this is only a snippet of it because I want our guests here today to go to our COS Instagram page to get the full story. And again, here's just another cute post that my group came up with that provided some tips for us to decrease our energy consumption this summer and increase our savings.
Another one of our important priorities is emphasizing that APA values are environmental values and that environmental values are APA values. They are fundamentally compatible and in fact can be based on each other. While presenting a social media post that's presenting some supporting information like the fact that Asian Americans are 2 times more likely to participate in certain energy efficiency programs like weatherization services compared to white Americans. In addition to this, we noted that the culture of collectivism in APA communities inherently promotes environmental protection since environmentalism requires individual sacrifice for a greater good. We expressed this in one social media post in which we talked about a Filipino concept called Bahanihan, which is a term that refers to a spirit of commonality, unity, and community to reach a certain goal. We created a social media post explaining this concept and interviewed Byron's grand uncle, who had stories of how he gave out solar lights and let people carpool in his Asian utility vehicle to help others out. So these were some of the ways we wanted to emphasize that APA values were fundamentally compatible with environmental values.
So with all of this information, we learned that there are 3 ways that we can be the change for the APA community. First, form sustainable habits. Doing the smallest things like turning off your lights or saving plastic bags does a lot more than you actually think. Second, be involved to uplift the APA community and our voices. We need to listen to what our community needs and turn those words into actual actions. And finally, start a conversation with a friend, family, or even stranger just to continue educating our community about what it needs, in particularly concerning energy conservation.